All right, so this, of course, is the cover story tonight on Fineprint. Now, days after Ukraine's war started in February last year, Russia took its forces to the outskirts of the capital city, Kyiv. In the months that followed, the Russian forces were forced to abandon the siege that they'd laid on the Ukrainian capital. But they continued to pound the Ukrainian capital from a distance. Now, suffering Russia's barrage of missiles and drone attacks for several months, the question, of course, is this. Did Kyiv wake up this morning to take the war to the gates of Moscow? Because that is precisely what's happened. A rare but a daring drone attack was launched on Moscow this morning. The attack reportedly has left at least about 2 people injured and several buildings across Moscow have been damaged. There are conflicting reports on how many drones were actually used in staging this attack. Officially, Russia says it's 8. There are other reports that say that at least about 25 drones were used. The Russian Foreign Ministry has said that its air defenses managed to destroy all of the attacking drones. It has blamed Ukraine for what it has characterized as a terrorist attack. The Russian Defense Ministry has said that 8 drones had attacked the Russian capital. Local media reports, in fact, put the number at over 25. The Russian President Vladimir Putin was apprised of the attack in real time. In a televised address that followed, President Putin praised Moscow's air defenses for thwarting this attack. He's also underlined that Ukraine was trying to provoke Russia by striking civilian targets. The Russian president has also highlighted that the attack on Moscow may be in response to the Russian strikes on the Ukrainian Army Intelligence Headquarters. The Ukrainian presidential aide has said that Kyiv was in fact watching the strikes with enjoyment and predicted more such attacks in the near future, even as he denied Ukraine's involvement in it. Now, attacks like these in the Russian capital are incredibly rare. Now, remember, earlier this month, on the 3rd of May, there were 2 unmanned aerial vehicles that were destroyed over the Kremlin in a pretty murky attack that Russia blamed on Kyiv. The Russians have also claimed that this was an attempt to try and target the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Kyiv, for its part, has denied the allegation. After the latest drone attacks, which Russia says were intended to create a sense of panic in the Russian capital, Moscow has attacked the West, arguing that it was its support that was pushing Kyiv towards increasingly reckless behavior. Western countries have long been warning Ukraine against carrying out attacks inside the Russian territory, especially by using their weapons. The West fears that attacks like these could escalate the situation beyond measure. Now, some leaked US intelligence documents have also shown that the Ukrainian leadership is planning more attacks inside of the Russian territory, and this could, of course, be part of Ukraine's long-awaited and the much-anticipated counter-offensive. For now, though, Ukraine has not claimed the attacks on Moscow, but there are dangerous thresholds that are being crossed, and things could, of course, flare up to a whole new level that no one perhaps expects at this moment could, in fact, happen and unfold in this war. Now, to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, are we to make of these attacks that have taken place, these drone attacks on the seat of power in Russia, on the Russian capital, Moscow, we're being joined by our guest, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who is a military expert for defense priorities, and he's, of course, joining us on this broadcast live. Now, General Davis, let me begin by asking you this. For several weeks now, we've been expecting that Ukraine would, of course, begin its much touted and much anticipated counteroffensive. And what we've witnessed in the last 24 hours are a series of drone attacks that have targeted several buildings across Moscow. Is this the Ukrainian counteroffensive that is presently underway?
No, I don't think so. I believe this is completely separate from that because if you're going to do anything to prepare the ground for an offensive, you'll do other things that Ukraine has been doing, which is try to attack concentrations of troops on the tactical front, knock out fuel, ammunition depots, those kinds of things, headquarters. That's something that would be directly related to the start of an offensive. But this, I think, is a reaction to the almost daily now attacks of Russia, both missiles and drones into Kyiv's capital. And I think that they're just communicating that, OK, we're tired of this. The gloves are coming off. You shot our capital. We're going to throw the same back. And I do agree that this is probably the beginning, not going to be a one-off.
Absolutely, indeed. So is Ukraine now looking at a strategy? Because remember, Ukraine is channeling a lot of its war efforts by the weapons that it has got from the West. The West says that Ukraine should not be attacking territories inside Russia. But now what is clear is this strategy where Ukraine wants to hit back at Russia pretty much in the manner that Russia has been hitting at Ukraine. Russia relies on its missile and drone attacks in different parts of Ukraine. So Ukraine is now hitting back at Russia with these drone strikes inside Moscow.
Yeah, and I think that what you're probably seeing here is a test of the West as much as of the Russians, because, you know, as you say, the West has been saying, hey, you can't use our weapons to attack inside of Russia because we are worried about escalation risk. But you saw just days ago, you saw a ground incursion into Russia in the Belgorod region that expressly used quite a lot of American military gear. And you haven't heard any response for that. And I think that the Ukraine side is doing this again. If they're, you know, getting some of these drones from some Western partners, they're going to wait and see if there's any pushback on that. And if there's not, then I think that they're going to continue to do that to expand the war to Russia. Now, the thing they have to be careful about is this could also be a double-edged sword, because instead of causing panic in Russia, it could also strengthen the resolve of the Russian people to exact even more attacks into Ukraine and spread from not just military targets, but to civilian targets. So it remains to be seen how this is going to play out, but it's a tough situation.
I think that's an important point that you've raised there. And also, General, let me also ask you this. How do you think the West would be looking at these weapons being used for attacks inside the Russian territory? Because it is difficult to see as to how this war could escalate from here on.
Now, it's a tough balancing act, but it's one that the West has to do, because escalation of this war and expansion beyond the borders of the Russia-Ukraine war is not in anyone's interest, in NATO, in Europe, or the United States for that matter, because the possibility, if this goes badly enough, that it could escalate into nuclear escalation, and that would be catastrophic for mankind, not just for, you know, the states that are involved here. And when you shoot things like this into Russia, you have to have more of a strategy and a purpose than just to make Moscow mad or angry. You know, you have to have a specific military purpose, right, or then it's not to our advantage. And I think we need to address that. All
right. My quick final question to you, because we're completely out of time. Now that the West has given the go-ahead for the F-16 fighter jets to be given to Ukraine, the Ukrainian pilots are in fact being trained for that very specific war machine. The question that I want to ask you is, do you think Ukraine can be relied upon to not use the F-16 fighter jets to strike targets inside of Russia?
No, I don't think there's any chance that we could expect that. I mean, why would they? They haven't been held anything else back, and I think that they're going to use them to whatever they think that they need to do to win. And I think that's something that we have to navigate, but I think it's going to be a tough situation.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much there, indeed, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, for joining us and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.